Hello, everybody. I am very excited today to introduce you to the Lean Startup Program and best practices. I'm going to take about 30 minutes today to go over some of these concepts, which I hope will serve as a nice introduction for you as you go through the rest of this course and as you begin to practice this process. Before we go too far into this, I want to lay out some expectations. It's important that you are prepared to commit to at least 10 hours per week to completing course learning and applying that towards customer discovery and validation. And in fact, as a benchmark, you should consider at least doing 10 high-quality interviews per week. Some lean startup programs like the NSFI Core program and programs that are built off that model require you to do, in a 10-week period of time, 10 interviews each week to do 100 interviews. So you should aim not just for, you should aim for high quality, but aim for lots of different styles of interviews, because it is only through getting a lot of data will you be able to get at stronger conclusions on what you're trying to do. And I really want to underscore the importance of working with a business mentor. A business mentor is someone that has some industry expertise, some startup experience, some lean startup practice, someone who can help you think outside of the box, maybe make some introductions on your behalf, but someone who's not necessarily part of your team, but is willing to be an advocate of your process, because they're going to be the ones that will help challenge your thinking and will help you to process the information. We'll be able to look at the data that you're bringing to the table in a new way. So a business mentor is someone that's very important. Identify someone in the community, talk with your campus leaders, help them, get someone to get on your team, and then stick to a relationship once a week by phone, by Skype, some way. 30 minutes to an hour each week is important. And be prepared. Bring to them ahead of time a summary of some of the things that you've been doing, the assumptions that you wanted to test, the type of experiments that you laid out, the results that you got. Give them that information. Give them a chance to think about it, and then that'll allow for your conversation to go much more smoothly. And so these are my recommendations, but above all, please, please, please consider having a business mentor as part of your team. What I want to do is give you a little bit of background today about Lean Startup, and I'll admit I'm hoping to convince you about the value of what the Lean Startup process does, which is all about validating that there is a customer that wants to buy your innovative product or technology. Let's go ahead and start with a story. Let's begin with the story of this really cool tech that really didn't become a good business. In 2001, Segway was touted as one of the ways that human transportation was to be revolutionized. Big customers came on board early and invested almost $100 million to develop the product. But despite this revolutionary technology that worked, the product failed for a number of reasons, including a failure to understand the customers in the market. If you look at this chart over here, there are some factors. So for example, customer satisfaction was rated as a negative. And they said that in this price range, the Segway competed with small cars or scooters, which are not that limited by range, recharge, or high acquiring costs. So it wasn't significantly better than the competition. Customers weren't willing to accept it. It was a radical design concept, not yet accepted as the dominant design. And it didn't meet quality guidelines. Technology, I don't know if it's listed here, but one of the things that we talked about was that it was difficult for people to ride on the road, and they didn't know if it was good for pedestrians or if it should be driven on the road. And so essentially, this technology that worked, that was really cool, just wasn't something that took over because it did not have enough customers that were willing to adopt it. So let's take a step back and define a few things. What's a company? A company is an organization which sells a product or service in exchange for revenue and profit. And companies are organized around business models. Business models describe all the parts of the company that are necessary to make money. It describes the rationale for creating, delivering, and capturing value. I hope that you'll begin to think about this, but customers don't care about your technology or product. People don't care that you have a computer. They care about what the computer does, right? People don't care about a gaming system. They care about what the gaming system does. People get on the social media platforms not because it's, the social media platform, but it's because it allows you to share things. It allows you to interact with people. It allows you to, do things. It offers a gain, or it helps you solve a problem. That's why customers buy things, technology and products. It offers a gain, or it helps you to solve a problem. Your goal in this program is to focus on identifying your business model, and your business model will be your repeatable and scalable strategy to capture value for your business model. I just want to bring up a couple more definitions. Steve Blank, which is the father of the Lean Startup process, has described a startup as a temporary organization that's designed to search for a repeatable and scalable model. One of his proteges, Eric Ries, labels startups as entities that are extremely uncertain, and my colleague calls them that they're learning organizations. And what I just want to highlight here for you is that there's a lot of uncertainty, and so of course businesses have failed because there's a lot of uncertainty, and you have to go and search. Talk to a lot of people, investigate, run experiments, and look for that repeatable and scalable model. Here's a little bit more background. What we used to believe, what's been kind of the dogma for teaching entrepreneurship and business, is that startups are just smaller versions of a large company. You start with an operating plan, you hire a sales manager, you get a CFO, you write a business plan, and then you go out and execute on it, you hit financial milestones, and voila, everyone's successful and happy. But after years and decades of running startups with this mantra, what's been discovered is that no business plan survives first contact with customers. What we now know is that there needs to be a shift from focusing on product development and a shift away from writing a business plan. Let me offer you another example. Again, this is what we thought startups were. It was an idea, and that getting from an idea to business was an exact straight line. But what we're realizing is that getting from an idea to a business is actually full of winding curves and uncertainty and roadblocks, and so hopefully this illustration impresses upon you that the goal of searching and uncovering and being open to change is so very important to make sure that you hit on something that is workable, or that you stop something that's not workable. Let's talk about an opportunity where someone should have stopped. So, like again, more startups fail from a lack of customers than from a failure of product development. And one example from the late 90s is that Motorola spent $5 billion to build and launch an infrastructure of satellites to provide worldwide wireless phone service. It wasn't the time, unfortunately, for that. And so $5 billion later, that wasn't well adopted by customers. Another one, Pet.com, lost $300 million in investment. It was a poor business model consisting of a poorly understanding of their sales, the cost of goods, customer acquisitions, and lifetime value, and this contributed to the company's demise. And hopefully these examples exemplify that knowing your customers require you to gain critical data not only on who, but on what, why, when, and also be able to quantify all those transactions. The focus on data-driven decisions is a key component to the Lean Startup process. We've talked about this, that a startup exists to search for a known viable business product, and that the goal is to shift away from focusing on product development. The idea is that, if you have enough money and enough resources, you'll probably develop a product that works. But if you don't have the right customers, and if you don't know what the customers want solved, you're not going to develop a good product anyway. So spend the time de-risking the riskiest element of your business, and that is the customers. Even though this is being said and it's being, adopted, we're still going to get it wrong. Even the best of us get it wrong about 50% of the time. If you think about Google Glass, right? So be open to accepting that your ideas are assumptions and be willing to thoroughly test your hypotheses. And I just want you to keep in mind that, even the best of us, even the best companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon, they don't always hit home runs. They get it wrong. But here's the difference. They have more of an infrastructure, resources, money in the bank, so that if they make a wrong investment on something, they have more of a chance to recoup their losses. If you, as a startup with little resources, little effort, a small team, if you make a wrong move, the cost could be pretty big. And so spending that time working through what the riskiest assumptions are and testing and validating and making sure that you get it right early on is going to be much better for you and much better for your time. So let's talk about Lean Startup. Hopefully I've convinced you that there's a better way of thinking about building a business that's not focused on product development. And so you may ask now, what is Lean Startup? Lean Startup is a data-driven approach to answer the question of, should this be built? And the answer lies in your learning on whether there is a big enough market to support your cost of operations, whether this market is sustainable and attainable with the resources you have in place today. And I'll try to talk some of these considerations in more detail in a moment, but this is a pretty radical change. So Lean Startup is a tool that uses these, iterative process. You start with a hypothesis or an assumption. I'll use these words interchangeably. You you design an experiment based on that assumption. You test it, you glean some insights, you refine your hypothesis or your assumption, and you run this process over again. Sometimes the experiment will be you talking to people, doing interviews. Sometimes the experiment will be you actually doing something to gauge customer interaction, like having a website and seeing how many people go to the website, or actually making sales and see how many people buy it. Or some people have done like a product spec sheet and see how many people are interested in the product spec sheet. There's a number of different ways to gauge whether or not customers are interested in the solution that you're offering. But essentially, you're going to be starting with a hypothesis, and you're going to refine that hypothesis because of testing. For those scientists that are in the audience, hopefully you'll appreciate the scientific method. So here's a kind of a linear way of looking at this, but you're going to be using a tool called the Business Model Canvas, and this is a one-page tracking tool that documents 9 critical elements of your business. And from your business model, you're going to extract hypotheses, and you extract hypotheses on a number of different things, such as your total available market, your serviceable market. You'll consider what a low fidelity minimal viable product is. You'll consider the channels. Is it going to be through social media? Is it going to be through other digital channels? Is it going to be through physical channels? Are you going to be selling it through distributors? What are the channels that are going to be the best way to reach your customers? What kinds of markets? And what is the pricing? All of these areas are examples of hypotheses or assumptions that you can test. Now, you're going to prioritize. You're not going to just start with talking about pricing. You have to start somewhere, and we recommend that you start with testing whether or not there's a problem to be solved or a gain to be given to customers. And there's a number of ways that you can test the problem, run experiments on the problem. And then once you've really honed in on the right problem, you'll be doing experiments to test if yours is the right solution to fix that problem or offer that gain. And hopefully you'll get enough information that will tell you this is something to proceed on, or maybe you have to make a pivot because it's not a big enough market, or it's not the right solution, or you've not hit on the right problem, or maybe even you've decided that this is not quite the business for you. There are a number of resources that can help you better understand this process, and I would encourage you to pick them up at your library or to borrow them or somehow access them. But one is the Business Model Generation. Another one is the 4 Steps to the Epiphany. And then a third book, which isn't listed here, is by Bill Aulet. That's Bill Aulet. He's a professor at MIT, and he has a book called Disciplined Entrepreneurship, or 24 Steps to Disciplined Entrepreneurship. And I think all of those readings will be very helpful, and they're good instructional tutorials on how to think about building your business. They're not bad reads either. Okay, so Business Model Canvas has these 9 elements, and again, these are all considered guesses. And the guesses, like I said, this is going to be your scorecard. So the Business Model Canvas is something that you're going to iterate on. I would recommend that you find a free resource. We use a paid resource called Launchpad Central, but if you can find a free resource where you can digitally document changes to your Business Model Canvas. Otherwise, good old pen and paper works. You know, you can call Business Model Canvas version 1, and then when you go out and learn, you know, you update your Business Model Canvas and call it version 2. But really, it's important to find a way to document your learning on the Business Model Canvas. Please be open to change and be willing to pay attention to the data that you're gathering. If your Business Model Canvas is not changing from week to week, chances are you're not learning. Okay, so we've talked that now these are guesses, but how do you turn those guesses into facts? Well, you turn those guesses into facts by getting outside of the building and talking to people. And the first critically important learning goal is to discover or confirm the customer's burning pain, or conversely, identify if there's a really big gain that they're looking for. An ideal burning pain is something that has been so troublesome that the customers have tried and failed to find solutions. Burning pains may also equal gains, like I've said, and customers want to see, which might include savings, tools that make the customer's jobs easier, tools that customers have searched for, tools that are exponentially improved in quality over other offerings, or products and services that improve a customer's perceived status. So while searching for pain, you are also learning about the market size and will uncover key insights on the channels and pricing. So for searching for the pain, for example, some people may say, you know, this is a product that's going to be great for all, you know, for all physical therapists. But perhaps it's only, you know, you refine that learning by saying it's only physical therapists that belong to hospital networks that are this big. Or maybe it's physical therapists that only specialize in this particular area. Or perhaps it's physical therapists that are early in their career. And so you're looking for ways to refine, and that's how you're as you're uncovering the pain, you're asking questions about the demographics to really understand who exactly is the targeted customer. Now I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this slide because I think it's important to understand that this is a process. Customer development is a process. You're going to get out and talk to a lot of different people. It says 60 to 80 here, so consider that 6 to 8 weeks in a time, even though it says 3 months. You should be talking to a lot of different people because you don't have 3 months to go through this process. So your initial goals are to test for the real burning problem and confirm that you're really understanding that problem. And then you'll test that your solution solves that problem. So like I said, you're going to first test that there's a real problem, and then you're going to next test if you have a solution that solves that problem. This process of first customer discovery, which is testing that the problem and testing that there's a market for a problem, and then customer validation, which is the testing that the solution is the right solution for that customer segment. In each process, testing the problem and testing the solution, there's a two-step process, which I'm going to call learning and confirming. So let's talk a little bit about this. While learning, you're focused on the customer's life. Hold on, let me go back to that slide. Okay. So while learning, you're focused on the customer and you're focused on their life and not your idea. We're going to ask you in the beginning to not talk about your idea and instead focus on listening to the customer. You're going to understand what motivates them. What challenges are they experiencing? What needs do they want filled? A solution that targets the customer and captures their voice, you know, what they want solved is a better marketing tool. And sometimes the pivot is all in the way that you pitch the solution. Now, after you get feedback on a minimum viable product and talk with customers about your idea, there's an art to this too. In the confirmed state, you're focused on commitments and not opinions. If this truly solves a pain for someone, they will want to commit time, resources, reputation, money, or something else that is valuable to them to get this going. I really can't underscore this point enough. We recently had a team leave a program that we run because their learning indicated that customers, and I use that word air quotes, were only excited when the idea was free. No one wanted to commit money or time to their solution. So to me, this team succeeded in this program because they listened to the data instead of pushing their idea. So with a validated problem, you can test the solution, which we just kind of mentioned. And we commonly refer to that as testing a minimum viable product, or an MVP. And this can be done in a variety of ways, but the goal is to identify the smallest feature set that gets you to the most orders, learning, and feedback. You know, a biggest problem is that people invest in over-featured, very technical, complicated solutions, when in reality the customer only wanted this small component of it to solve their problem. How much money and time is wasted in building extra features or building features that don't even meet the customer's demand? There's a YouTube video that I would recommend. It's by a gentleman called Rob Fitzpatrick, and it's called, I think, the Mom Test. But he leads his discussion by saying, you know, they built this really awesome tool they thought was really awesome for kids to get into coding, and they spent months and months, you know, they got investor dollars, and that was really, you know, encouraging to them to not leave their lab because now they had the money to focus on developing the product. And they finally had a product after months and months of work and put it in front of the kids, which was basically their customer segment, and the kids hated it. How much time and money was wasted on developing something that they could have understood if they had just left their building and showed it to someone and gotten some initial feedback. So that is the importance of testing a minimum viable product. And there are ways to do this, right? You don't actually have to build the thing. You can actually do some workarounds. There's a number of different techniques that you can learn about that help you think through a minimum viable product, and this will come up in a different lesson, but you can also Google minimum viable product and look at different ways to consider how to build something or how to test something without actually building the actual real thing that works. Okay. So for the Big Idea Tournament, the first hurdle is to identify your first iteration of the product market fit. This evidence-based understanding of the intersection between the competition, demand, and product is what helps you determine a key component to your business model. This is what we're going to call kind of, in the element of the value proposition. Keep in mind the solution can't be incremental. It really does have to be significant, which means customers generally require two things. Either it has to be a 10x improvement over existing options, not either. It has to be a 10x improvement over existing options, and it has to be easy to incorporate into their daily lives. You're going to go through multiple rounds of minimum viable product testing and questioning to arrive at a product market fit. This is an iterative approach of learning and confirming. Sometimes you'll discover you need to pivot your assumptions to something that doesn't kill your business idea. Please be open to and looking for those changes, because pivot cycle time matters. If you can identify a pivot point and make a move, you can save time, get feedback, and build something customers will pay for. And let me tell you, it's all about making money. Ultimately, we're driving towards a validation of a profitable and scalable business model. And we spend a lot of time going over the need to test different assumptions. But what are the assumptions? So let's talk a little bit about them. Here are some questions that kind of give you a jumping off point to think about, what are the key elements or key questions that you're going to ask for some of these, the 9 components of your business model. This also organizes sequentially the suggested elements of your business model to test first. It's often suggested that you look first at the value propositions and the customers. Once you feel good about that, you can talk about the channels that reach the customers and how do you retain those customers. And then you can think about how do those customers like to pay? Is it a subscription model? Is it a pay for service model? Whatever the case may be. So take a minute to look at this. Take a minute to pause this slide and read through some of the questions to get a broad sense of the big picture questions, how you might ask those questions, and the order in which you should be doing your testing. And again, it's all about who's going to pay for it and what's your revenue model. So sometimes we use this slide to really illustrate how the intersections of all this learning goes, because what often happens when people are doing lean startup is they get stuck. You know, you get stuck on only doing value propositions and customer segments, but you need to be looking at the entire business model canvas, especially if you want to win the Wisconsin Big Idea Tournament or the Idea Advance program. You need to be understanding how you're going to get these customers, keep these customers, and grow those customers as part of your customer relationships. What are the costs of getting, keeping, and growing? You're going to need to understand what are the channels to reach these customers. How do you reach the customers? How does the market work? We had a client that thought that they could sell directly to their customers, their end users, but it turns out those customers don't ever actually buy directly from the provider. They buy through a distribution network. So what ended up happening is that the company had to understand how the distribution network worked. Well, it turns out each of the distribution network partners takes off a piece of, you know, a chunk of margin. So then that influenced what the pricing was going to have to look like, and that influenced how the revenue was going to work. So really understanding their customers, how their customers like to buy, what their customers were looking at, what the channels of reaching those customers influenced what their pricing and the revenue model is. I also put this up here because sometimes people are, you know, they think that they've hit on a value proposition and a customer segment, but they forget that the customer segment needs to be big enough to support all of the costs, the reoccurring costs and the one-time costs. If you have a small customer segment and you're not selling a high-value solution, is it truly a profitable and scalable business model? So this is not something that I hope that you'll spend a very large amount of time on, but I wanted to just make you aware that there is an end goal. It's not just about winning the Big Idea Tournament, and it's not just about competing at the International Business Model Competition, because it's about learning, and it's about learning about your business model. And those people who do the most rigorous learning, even if they've not discovered every component of their business model canvas, those are the ones that do the most successful in the Big Idea Tournament, and they're the ones who are most competitive for the Idea Advance program. So I have one final slide for this section, and that's all about your investment readiness level. And this is another way to gauge your learning. Here's a snapshot from Steve Blank's description of the investment readiness level. At the earliest stages, you've completed the first business model canvas. And yeah, you're already on your way. As you move through the levels, you'll see that your learning becomes more detailed and, importantly, is confirmed or validated through increasingly better minimum viable product testings. If you've achieved an understanding for your cost of customer acquisition and related metrics that matter, you should confidently be at a point where you can secure follow-on investment. We're probably not going to achieve this out of the Big Idea Tournament. For those of you who move on to the Idea Advance program, you're probably not going to achieve that in the Idea Advance program, but it's really important to keep in mind. If you're really serious about your business and growing this idea, you really want to be serious about learning and validating each of the different steps and thinking of your progress as it's measured against these different components of the investment readiness level. With that said, I want to thank you for your time, and I look forward to talking with you individually about your business ideas. Please don't ever hesitate to reach out, because I'm here to help you, and good luck as you pursue your idea and you launch into this lean startup practice.